Second Judicial District Court of the State of Nevada now in session. The Honorable Bridget Peck presiding.
Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. We are on the record in case number DV10-01877, Keith McDowell versus Tonya McDowell. If I may have appearances, please.
Bonnie Mahan, Your Honor, representing the plaintiff, who is seated to my right.
And Beth Leno, representing Tonya McDowell, who is seated to my left.
All right. Counsel, does anyone wish to exercise the rule of exclusion?
I would like to, Your Honor.
Your Honor, this is my legal assistant. She will not be testifying. She's going to be taking notes for me.
Perfect. That works.
And I would also exercise it, although it doesn't appear to be necessary at the moment.
And just so the parties know, the rule of exclusion means that you may not talk to witnesses about what has taken place in the courtroom as well. Witnesses may not sit in, but you may not talk to the witnesses about what has occurred until after they have testified and have been released as witnesses, okay? We had an issue with that just recently, so I want to be very clear with the parties as to what that rule means. Counsel, I've read your trial statements. Do you want to go just to testimony, or would you like to make brief opening opening statement?
Your Honor, I'd like to forego opening statement and save it for close.
All right.
I would like to make an opening statement, Your Honor.
And do we have stipulations with regard to the exhibits?
We do. I think Mrs. Mahan has put hers actually on her exhibit list in the front of her book, and I have reviewed it. That is fairly accurate with two exceptions. We did not stipulate to EE in her book. We did stipulate to U, which is reflected as not. So other than that, I think that is an accurate reflection of what we have stipulated to in their book.
Let me make those changes. And counsel, when we are done with this case and when I've made my ruling, I'll go ahead and give you back your binders, just so you know to expect that. I don't want you to have to spend more costs than necessary.
In my book, Your Honor, it may be easier to tell you what I understand the objections are to, because there's only a couple of them.
All right.
And that's Exhibit 3, 8, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Okay.
And Bonnie, you can correct me to be sure I'm right, but the rest of it, I believe that we are stipulating to its admission.
Just a moment. 3, 8,
12, 13, 14, and 15.
Thank you. I've got it. Ms. Mahan, is that correct?
That is correct.
Counsel, thank you for that. That makes life and the trial much easier. Ms. Luna, if you want to make your opening statement.
Sure. Your Honor, this case is about Mr. McDowell's regret. And I think in any divorce case, the parties have regret. That regret may be that they even married the other individual. It may be that there's no prenuptial agreement. It may be regret over the assets and debts they've incurred during the marriage. Sometimes it's even regret over the children that they have. But that regret does not give this court a legal basis to find an unequal distribution of the assets or to award alimony. Interviewing their trial statement, it's my understanding that that's exactly what they intend to request, and that those items are being requested as punishment to Mrs. McDowell for how the funds were spent from two loans that the parties took out. The first being in 2005 and the second in 2007. We believe that when you look at this case, you're going to find that Mr. McDowell had knowledge, that he consented to and participated in those decisions. And that fact alone means this court should not find waste. We know that in order for an unequal distribution to take place, you must have a compelling reason. And that compelling reason can be, for example, if one party violates a court order during the proceeding. It can also be if one person maybe manipulated and took over assets without the involvement of the other party. I would suggest to you that the evidence is going to show that didn't happen here because, again, Mr. McDowell had knowledge, he consented to and participated in the decisions made in this marriage. I think there are 3 examples they're going to give you, and one is that in somewhere around 2005, he quitclaimed a home that he owned a separate property to the community. He put both parties' names on it. We believe the evidence will show that that was done as a basis to get financing for the 2005 loan. Again, this was a decision that Mr. McDowell had full knowledge. It was discussed. He consented to it and participated in the quitclaim of that deed. The same thing goes for both loans. In both cases, it was discussed by the parties. He had knowledge of the decision. He consented to the decision, and he participated in how those funds were spent. That being said, when you look at the Nixon case, which is a case actually involving a wife disputing post the husband's death a transfer of property, and in that case it was clear that at the time the property was transferred, although husband had made the decision, that wife was aware of the decision, she attended the ceremony where the property was handed over, and even though she may not have said anything, to some degree she made no objection. I think the same thing applies for here. The loans that were taken out and spent, the last one was in 2007, and those funds were about spent by the end of 2007. Again, Mr. McDowell, he participated in the decision to take that loan. He then consented to take that loan, and he then participated in how that money is spent. That is not a spouse who is not aware of how the money is being spent or involved in its spending, and I don't think that you will find waste. They've also requested, and I think this is the other big issue, alimony in this case, and I think the evidence is going to show that their income is very close to the same. Alimony cannot by law be used as a basis for punishment against another party, and I would suggest to you that that's what they're requesting. Their trial statement asks for 75% of the mortgage payment to be paid by my client as alimony, and in addition, 75% of the loan to be repaid by her. When you equate those numbers, that's 135% on that loan that they expect her to pay. That is punishment. It's not an equal distribution. It is not a basis for alimony, and we are requesting that the court deny both those claims and find it for an equal distribution in this case.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Mahan. You want to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, my first witness is Tonya McDowell.
Ma'am, up here.
Watch your step. This court clerk remain standing for swearing, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated, ma'am. Go ahead, Ms. Mahan.
Your Honor, do you mind if I remain seated?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Excuse me. And will you state your name, please, and spell your last name for the record?
Tonya Deneen McDowell, McDowell.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a CEO for Rivendell Independent Living, Inc.
And your job title is CEO?
Yes.
And what other corporations or LLCs are you involved with?
Rohan Ranch is a 501(c) filed with the state, and the Veterans Association.
I'm sorry, what is the actual name of the third one?
National Veterans Association.
Would you please turn to what's been marked as Exhibit F in the blue binder?
Veterans Action of Stevens County.
Okay, what are you looking at?
Entity search.
It's a what? I'm sorry?
It says entity, business entity search.
And is that what caused you to correct your answer as to the third company that you're involved in?
No. Basically,
Ma'am, just so you know, you can.
I'm going to ask you to take the binder down
Okay.
and sit down, please. You're away from the microphone. We're recording the proceedings. I need to make sure that we pick you up.
Okay.
You are director, according to this paper, director, president, secretary, and treasurer of this company, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, the actual name of the company is what?
Veterans Action of Stevens County.
And when was that company formed?
If I remember correctly, in 2011, later 2010 or 2011.
And what does that company do?
Actually, it does nothing right at the moment.
And why was it formed?
The intention was to do outreach to veterans associations for people for supportive housing.
So it is your testimony under oath today that that company does not operate a group home anywhere?
No, it does not.
And it does not do any Medicaid billing for group home clients?
No, it does not.
And it does not have a Medicaid provider number?
No, it does not.
I would request that Plaintiff's Exhibit F be admitted.
I object your lack of foundation, and this client would not have personal knowledge as to the authenticity of this particular document.
Your Honor, this is a business record kept by the Secretary of State, available to anybody online. That's was a search under her name as officer, which you can see on the page. It has all indications of trustworthiness and simply verifies the companies that our Secretary of State indicates that she is involved with.
Again, Your Honor, this client did not pull this particular document. She would have no ability to authenticate whether or not this is a true and accurate copy of this particular website. It's beyond her lack of personal knowledge. And in addition, I don't believe that Ms. Manhan has built a foundation for that knowledge either.
She doesn't have to have personal knowledge when it's a business record, and this particular document is in the form that the court is well familiar with from the Nevada Secretary of State. The witness has testified to the contents of the document already and has verified that the document is true and correct. The court overrules the objection. Exhibit F is admitted.
Ma'am, would you please turn to Exhibit A in that same book? This has all, as you know, Your Honor, has been admitted by stipulation. I'll give you a moment just to look at it before I ask you a couple questions, Ms. McDowell. Do you recall responding to Kenneth's interrogatories?
Yes.
If you look at page 2 of those interrogatories, and you look at line 5 on page 2, there's a sentence there. Could you read that sentence out loud?
Bless you.
These interrogatories shall be deemed continuing so as to require supplemental answers if you or your attorneys obtain further information between the time answers are served and the time of trial.
One moment. Would you please look at page 5 of that same exhibit? Interrogatory number You in fact did not ever inform defendant during this process that you had started a new company, become involved with the new company, that being the one we discussed earlier with the first name Veterans, correct?
I'm really sorry, Ms. Mahan. Are you looking at the circled number 5, or are you looking at page 5 to the answers?
It's the same in my book.
It's not in mine. Page 12 would be the answers according to your circle. Page 5 just has the question.
Oh, yes. I'm just looking right now, my interrogatory is on page 5.
All right, so maybe if you could at least clarify that way, it would help
Sure.
me, if you don't mind.
On page 5, that is marked page 5 in the bottom right-hand corner in handwriting, are my interrogatories, and that is the question. Now, actually, to clarify, let's go ahead and move to page 12 in the bottom right-hand corner, which is your answer to that interrogatory. And in that answer, you did not mention Veterans. I'm referring that company has a longer name for purposes of this proceeding. I'm referring to it as Veterans. You did not list that there, correct?
No, I did not.
And why is that?
That was an oversight on my part because I was looking at active businesses.
Had Veterans even been formed then?
It was formed, but it wasn't through anything that we were actively doing. So that was my foresight in giving that to my attorney.
Okay. Could you please turn to Exhibit G? If you look at the first page of that, does that appear to be another entity detail from the Secretary of State of Nevada?
Correct.
And doesn't it in fact show that this company was formed on, well, if you look at file date, well, hold on. In the upper right-hand corner, it says 7/26/12. And if you would turn to
11, counsel.
11.
I apologize, 7/26/11, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you turn to page 4 of that same exhibit, are you on page 4? In the top right-hand corner, it also appears the articles of incorporation were filed on 7/26/11, and in the bottom right-hand area of the page, 7/25. So roughly between 7/25 and 7/26/11, correct?
Can you repeat that, please?
This company was formed somewhere in the vicinity of late July 2011.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So just a moment ago, when we were talking about the interrogatories, and I said the company had the company even been formed yet, you stated no. But in fact, it had been formed, correct?
Correct.
No, I'm sorry.
Objection. The
I
question
withdraw that
states
question.
facts and evidence.
Yeah, I withdraw the question. That was wrong.
Yeah, the testimony was
Yes.
opposite.
Let me, a few moments ago, when I asked you, in response to your interrogatory response, I said to you, had Veterans even been formed yet? And your answer was yes. And so now that we look at the actual Secretary of State record, in fact, Veterans was not formed until last summer, during the pendency of this case, correct?
Correct.
I would request that Plaintiff's Exhibit G be admitted, Your Honor. Actually, hold on. Yes. I would request Plaintiff's Exhibit G be admitted.
Counsel?
I would have the same objection, but notwithstanding that, based on your prior ruling, I assume you're going to let it go in.
Again, this has all the indicia of trustworthiness. The court is well familiar with Secretary of State's website, and this appears to be a business record generated by the Secretary of State. The court overrules the objection.
Are there any corporations or LLCs that you are either an officer or a resident agent of, other than the ones you have named today so far?
Not that I'm aware of.
Would there be companies out there that you're an officer or an agent of that you're not aware of?
No.
So again, it's your testimony today, I want to be clear, make sure I understood you, that Veterans is sitting there doing nothing.
True.
It has no clients, it has no clients? Does it have any bank accounts?
No.
Who is Gene Jackson?
He is the head of the Veterans Association, who was the one who did file the paperwork.
How do you know Gene Jackson?
He is a contact in supportive services for the veterans' time, and that is why he approached us to ultimately assist in outreach, information dissemination to veterans for services.
One moment. Are there any group homes in Washoe County? Well, strike that. What are the addresses of the group homes that Rivendell is involved in operating in Washoe County?
2905 Crown Canyon Court and 2990 Regal Court.
And when did the home on Regal begin operating as a group home?
Approximately I want to say it was in 2010.
Have you ever at any time since the commencement of these proceedings acknowledged or disclosed that there is a group home being operated on Regal?
Yes, I did disclose that information
When?
with the leases.
Oh, so you're talking, okay. Are you talking leases that were provided to me within the last couple weeks?
No, they were provided earlier.
Because I have a lease for Crown Canyon. I've never seen a lease for Regal. Do you know what date that was provided to me on? Or maybe Ms. Winter can help with that.
Ms. Rainier, I'm not really sure what the point is. I have that former rental agreements for Rivendell were provided on June 9th, 2011. I don't specifically have what those leases were. I have rental lease for Rivendell, former rental agreements for Rivendell, all provided with a response to request of production from you. Again, I don't have specifically what those were. This is just my short sheet. I have an additional residential lease was provided to you on March 13th of 2012. And it looks like July 8th, 2011, there was a Rivendell lease and deposit for 2905 Crown Canyon Court. Another lease dated June 1st, 2010, a commercial lease agreement for November 4th, 2010.
And those were provided to you on what date?
I have July 8th, 2011. So I have that leases were provided June 9th, 2011, and July 8th, 2011. It looks like again on March 13th, 2012.
Okay, but you cannot tell from that list that you have there whether or not Regal was provided prior to March 13th,
I'm not on the stand, so
No, I'm
if you need me to be a witness,
No,
you
I'm-
need to call me as a
I'm
witness.
asking you a question. In
I
case you can help. If you can't, that's fine.
I can tell you that the one I have specifics on is 2905 Crown Canyon Court, Reno, Nevada. I could look at the specific request to produce, but we did a short list for me to have here
That's
today.
okay. I understand, and I can bring the production file in this afternoon. So, Crown Canyon, how many bedrooms does, I'm sorry, not Crown Canyon, Regal. How many bedrooms does the residence on Regal have?
5.
How many clients does that residence have in it?
4.
Now that's quite atypical for your group homes, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Typically, your group homes have 2 clients per bedroom, correct?
Not necessarily.
How many clients do you have at Crown Canyon?
3.
And that is a 4-bedroom house, correct?
It's a 5-bedroom house.
So it's your testimony under oath today that Crown Canyon has 4 group home residents and that Regal has 3?
No, Regal has 4.
Okay.
Crown Canyon has 3.
And, I'm sorry, can you clarify for me one more time, so we got a little dispute and I don't recall your answer. When you began operating approximately Regal as a group home?
Was that a question to me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. You know, honestly, I can't remember right off the top of my head. I would have to look at the date of the lease.
What is your highest level of education?
I have a GED.
And do you hold any licenses at this time?
Not necessarily, no. CPR, some my behavioral health training certifications.
So how is Rivendell doing? How's the business going?
As far as, can you be more specific?
Monetarily?
Right now, we're still struggling because of the changes with the system.
And what do you mean when you say the changes with the system?
Magellan is no longer the Medicaid service provider. We have gone through the changes in program modifications to their service delivery standards.
Who is the Medicaid service provider?
It's called HEPS, I believe, HPPES.
And what is Rivendell's Medicaid provider number?
Provider type or provider number? Could not quote that to you right offhand. We're provider type 82.
Yes, I know that. You
And-
don't
and-
know
and-
Rivendell's Medicaid provider number? Has Rivendell's Medicaid provider number changed in the last few years?
We have several numbers that we operate off of. There's several different types of numbers. You have a provider type. We are provider type 82. Our NPI number or API number are like 20-digit numbers.
Would you please turn to Plaintiff's Exhibit A? Page 12 in the bottom right-hand corner. interrogatory number 9 reads, please provide the current Medicaid provider number, Rivendell Independent Living, Inc., as well as the current PT provider type number used by you and/or Rivendell and/or Rohan Ranch. Did you ever provide us the Medicaid provider number?
Provider type 82. That's what, yes.
I asked for two different things. I asked for a Medicaid provider number,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked for a Medicaid provider type number.
Mm-hmm.
You provided a Medicaid provider type 82. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever provide a Medicaid provider number?
That is what we use. We have an MPI number, which is our billing number, which is authorized by those who provide the services, an NPI number.
So
I'm unclear at what number you're specifically looking at.
Are you suggesting today that running the type of business that you operate, you have never heard the phrase Medicaid provider number and know it to be something different than provider type?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to ask you, is what number are you looking for? Provider type has several different codes under it. There's 30-some codes under a provider type. There's MPI numbers that providers are issued to bill with, so I'm trying to find out which number you're looking for.
So you are saying that your testimony today in court is when you read that interrogatory question, you thought that by just providing provider type number 82, you had completely answered that question.
In honesty, yes.
Would you please look at page 8 in that same exhibit, exhibit 1? Interrogatory number 1, please list the name of any and all employees of Rivendell Independent Living, Inc. and/or Rohan Ranch. Your answer to that question, Rivendell Independent Living never had any employees that was solely operated off of independent contractors. Do you stand by that answer today?
At that date, yes.
Did you not state in your trial statement that Rivendell has only independent contractors?
We have in my trial statement that we have 2 employees, actually 3 employees now.
So once these, strike that. Did you ever file a supplemental response to your interrogatories indicating that now, contrary to your prior answer, Rivendell has employees?
I do not remember.
Are you an authorized signer or account holder with any bank in Washington State?
No, I am not.
Is Rivendell?
No.
Or does Rohan Ranch have a bank?
No.
And how, I want to pronounce that right, is it Rohan?
Rohan.
How many clients are living on Rohan Ranch?
4.
Would you please look at in the same exhibit, page 10. At interrogatory number 5, on page 10 of exhibit A, you were asked to list the name and address of every client on Rohan Ranch, and you refused to answer that citing HIPAA concerns, correct?
Yes.
Would you please look at page 9 in that same exhibit? In interrogatory number 2, you were asked to list the name of any and all persons you claim have worked or provided services as independent contractors for Rivendell Independent Living, and various information about them. You objected to that, stating you didn't believe it was relevant to the case. And then you asked that we see an attached spreadsheet with 1099s. Correct?
Correct.
Would you please turn to Exhibit M? Would you please turn to page, in the bottom right-hand corner, page 20. And actually, for one moment, if you would turn to page 2 in that same exhibit. You'll see that on page 2, number 15, 16, and 17, you claim to be providing 1099 forms for the period 2007, basically, through 2010. And those were requested in our request for production of documents, correct?
Repeat that, please.
We requested in our request for production of documents that you provide copies of all 1099 forms issued by Rivendell for, I believe we requested the period 2004 to the present, although I understand Rivendell wasn't formed until after that. But you recall that we requested that and that you provided these in response to that?
Mm-hmm.
So now if you'll turn to page 20 in the same exhibit. This is what you provided, correct?
Yes.
This all the way through page 41 is what you provided.
Correct.
Is this what you consider to be 1099 forms? You requested to provide 1099 forms? Can you even turn to page 21? Can you even tell by looking at page 21 what year those people supposedly got 1099s?
No, other than the fact that this is scanned from our
Why not
QuickBooks.
provide the actual 1099 forms that you were requested to provide very specifically in our request for production of documents?
Because when you do 1099 forms, there are two forms that are created, one for the IRS and one for the person. And then this is recorded in the QuickBooks.
Okay, but-
The actual forms are not within the QuickBooks setting.
Okay, let's look at page 41 of this exhibit.
Okay.
That's a 1099 form, isn't it?
41?
Page 41 of this, oh, I'm sorry, it's the last page of this exhibit. It doesn't have a, turn to the last page of this exhibit. Last page of the exhibit. That is a 1099 form. right?
Correct.
She never provided that for anybody other than yourself, and you provided it just recently, correct? What you provided was what we see in the prior pages, many of which don't even have legible dates on them. Correct?
Because they're not stuff that's sent to me personally.
And I'm asking you,
Okay?
let's turn to Exhibit U, please. Let's look at request number 9. And the question is, please provide true and accurate copies of all W-2, W-3, W-4, and 1099 forms maintained and/or prepared by you and/or Rivendell Independent Living, Inc., and/or Rohan Ranch, and/or defendant from January 1, 2004 to the present. Did you do that?
We provided we didn't have anything in 2004.
I'm not concerned about that, because I know Rivendell wasn't formed then. So let's just talk about 2007 to the present.
Correct.
The entirety of your response to that interrogatory are the pages that we just looked at the end of the prior Exhibit N, correct?
Yes.
So you know what you were able to provide it for you, but not for anybody else.
I do not have access to their stuff. Once it's mailed out to them, it's their copies.
You are the CEO of Rivendell Independent Living Incorporated, and you don't keep copies of 1099 forms that you
It's
get.
kept within the QuickBooks that our bookkeeper does. The information is kept within the books, and I do not do the books.
Who does the books?
Pyramid Business Services.
Pyramid Business Services. And do you have plans for somebody from that company to testify in these proceedings?
Yes.
And what is that person's name?
Vicky?
Vicky DeMombro?
Uh-huh.
One moment, I'm sorry. Let's look at, in that same exhibit, page 4, interrogatory number 11. Please provide true, accurate, and complete copies of all tax returns in your possession filed by Rivendell Independent Living, Inc. from January 1, 2004 to the present, along with all attached schedules, forms, records, etc. Did you ever bother to do that?
I believe we did.
Will you look at Exhibit N, please? because N and O are the Rivendell returns that you provided for '08 and '09. You did also, I believe, provide one for '07, but I'm only addressing the '08 and the '09 returns there. Once you've looked at that, let me know. I have a couple questions. Do you believe that when you provided these forms, you provided all attached schedules, forms, records, etc.?
I believe so.
Were there any 1099 forms associated with either of these returns?
No, there weren't.
When did the first clients move on to the Rohan Ranch property?
Two thousand 2011, April of 2011.
April of 2011.
Actual clients, yes.
Didn't you in fact state in this case on more than one occasion that Rohan Ranch has no clients living on it?
And that was in 2010.
There were no interrogatories propounded to you in 2010, correct?
I don't understand what you're...
So it's your testimony today. Actually, would you please turn to Exhibit A? And page 11. Interrogatory number 7. Where the question was, please list the address of each and every group home or like facility currently being operated by you and/or Rivendell Independent Living and/or Rohan Ranch, and for each such address, identify how many bedrooms the dwelling has, how many clients reside in said dwelling, and how many non-clients reside in said dwelling. You listed 2 properties there, correct? Crown Canyon and Northport, Washington, which is what we're also referring to as Rohan Ranch, correct?
Well, actually, there should be 3.
Because there should be Regal.
Correct.
And this is another interrogatory response that you never supplemented, correct? Did you ever file a supplemental response to your interrogatories in this case?
No, we did not.
Okay. And then let's look at the sentence. Will you read, just read those last 2 sentences, starting with property has the following dwellings.
What would you like me to read?
Line 15, page 11. Those 2 sentences, property has the following dwellings.
The property has the following dwellings: 5-bedroom dwelling and a 3-bedroom dwelling. There are 5 cabins located on the property. There are currently 8 individuals currently living on the property. None of the 8 are clients.
Okay. So, although it is disputed the date we received these interrogatories, they are signed and dated on the 18th of April 2011. So on April 18th of 2011, Rivendell has a property in Washington with multiple houses and many acres, 8 people living on it, none of whom are clients. Correct?
That's what it states, yes.
Well, ma'am, you signed these, and you provided your answers under oath.
Mm-hmm.
So were you telling the truth on that day? Were there 8 people living there, none of whom were clients?
You know what? This is something that I didn't review, and when I signed it, I was just trusting that the information was in there correctly.
On April 18th of 2011, were
Correct.
there 8 people living on that property, none of whom were clients?
The majority of them are not clients. And to me, just to define what clients are, to me, is we have several different types of clients. We have clients that we do bill Medicaid for, which are in the properties here in Reno. When you say clients to me, we also have homeless people who we do not get funding for or bill for, who are residing in a place until we can get them to services which they need. So to me, I have a different perspective of what a client is. A client is someone that we actually bill Medicaid for services for.
Did you explain that in your interrogatory?
No, we did not.
So I want to understand then, because I am going to go by your interrogatory response because it was under oath, and I don't really accept your statement that you didn't review it. And under that response, there is a property in Washington being paid for by Rivendell money that has no clients on, according to that response, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, you state there are now clients on it, correct?
Correct.
So there were 2 parts of that question that you never filed supplemental responses to, correct?
I believe so.
Now you say there are, I'm sorry, how many clients on the property?
We actually have 2 clients.
And are those the clients that you can bill Medicaid for, or are those the homeless people that you just allow to stay there until you can get services for?
Actually, only one we do get a rental income from.
And who else lives on that property?
My parents live on that property. My son lives on that property. Another lady lives on the property there that has a disability that's from the community.
And what is that person's name?
Her name is Monica.
What's her last name?
Lisenby. Monica Lisenby.
Is that it?
There's 2 other, well, they're not clients, they're young adults that live on site, but they are not paying clients.
What are their first names?
There's Brad and there's Morgan.
So, sometime in the middle of 2010, you decided a ranch in Washington would be a promising idea for Rivendell, correct?
Yes.
And yet, I'm sorry, when did, I believe, did you say mid to late 2011 that clients actually began occupying that property as opposed to non-clients?
Yes.
So in mid 2010, you executed a lease purchase agreement for this property. I shouldn't say you, although that's an issue we can address later. I should say Rivendell. Rivendell executed a lease purchase on this property with the idea that it might make a nice place to have clients and perhaps to do other things as well, correct? Is that a fair statement?
To do workforce development, correct.
What was that? I didn't hear you.
The intention was to purchase a property to begin to do workforce development the following year.
the terms that you entered into that lease agreement under, in terms of deposit, monthly rent? What were the terms?
The intention at the time was when we did have our Medicaid funding and there was a positive cash flow. So in the midst of negotiating the property, it was a certain amount of money was placed down on the property to begin the process of purchasing the property, in the agreement that we would pursue additional funding and lending opportunities. Shortly thereafter, we lost all of our Medicaid funding, 68% of our Medicaid funding. And due to the fact that we were under a contract, just trying to be integrous and doing the right thing, we went back and they worked with us as far as renegotiating the lease of the property while we were still trying to figure out how to come up with the additional money to ultimately purchase it.
When did you lose 68% of your Medicaid funding?
Pretty close to the same time. It was about 2000, I believe, roughly about 2010 and 2011. Pretty much has been the whole revamping and restructuring what we do as far as services we provide.
So, sometime in mid-2010, strike that. What is the event, what is it that happened that caused you to lose, in your opinion, 68% of your Medicaid funding all of a sudden?
Because the Medicaid system was under investigation and all providers were being audited because a new company was coming in and taking over the Medicaid system.
Okay. So at the time that you applied to purchase this property, is it your testimony that at the time you applied you had not yet lost 68% of your Medicaid
Right,
funding?
we had not.
But then you did after that?
Yes, we did.
And how much money did you have to put down as a deposit?
I believe, honestly, it's roughly, I think we put down $25,000 down on the property.
So $25,000 of Rivendell money was put down on a property to lease.
With the lease option.
Right, with the lease option. And at
Yes.
the time, the property had no clients, correct?
Right, correct.
And that was mid-2010 that you started the lease purchase.
I'm really not well with dates, but roughly, yes.
Okay, well, why don't you take a look at Exhibit L. You recognize, turn to page 2. Actually, I'm sorry, hold on one moment.
Page 2, correct?
Sure, go ahead and turn to page 2. Do you recognize that? You can actually, go all the way 2 through...
Yes, I do recognize this.
What is it?
This is the commercial lease agreement and purchase agreement.
And if you look at page 16, what date does the notary public indicate that you signed that document?
On what page? 16?
Mhm. Because I asked that because I don't see a date on page 15. But it does appear there is a date on page 16 indicating when you signed that.
Actually, there was several of these documents that went back and forth. And the final one that was stamped that had the Montgomery stamp, the red stamp, that was the official copy. And this one does not have that.
Okay, so my question to you is, what date, according to page 16, was this document signed?
On page 16,
16 in the bottom right-hand corner.
or are you talking about page 17?
Can I approach the picture on the motion?
These two of these going.
I'm asking about this one.
Okay.
So what date does it appear to have been signed?
The 29th of October.
Okay, and this one, if you look on page 2,
28th of October, what year, ma'am?
2010.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, if you look at page 5 of this version, and I do understand there are other versions, and I'm going to point you to those in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But on page 5 here, the terms of this are $3,000 a month due on the 15th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. However, that was the reduced amount. Initially, that I believe you are saying you had to negotiate a reduction after that you lost the Medicaid, 68% of your Medicaid funding. Initially, it was a higher amount, correct? What was the monthly lease on that property?
I would have to, really honestly, I would have to look at the paperwork because these are two different.
Okay.
There was a sale agreement, which this all got renegotiated several different times. And due to the fact that the owner of the property lived in California, there was a whole lot of information going back and forth between the realtor and to us.
Turn to and isn't it in fact true that you put down a minimum of $14,000 cash deposit and originally signed off for $6,000 a month for this property?
Potentially, yes, that was may have been where we were at the very beginning of the negotiation because we had the potential to do it.
Okay, in fact, moments ago when I asked you what the deposit amount was you put down, you said you weren't sure, but you thought it was somewhere in the range of 20 to 25,000. So my statement of 14,000.
There was several in the midst of losing all the funding. There was several meetings in regards to all kinds of different numbers. So I'm trying to remember specifically what numbers we talked about, but there was several people involved because we had entered in a contract to purchase a property, which we at the time were very capable of doing.
Okay.
Okay? And so in the midst of losing all the funding, we were under contract, which if we failed to follow through on the contract because of our funding, the owner and the real estate agent and other people were very involved in trying to work the whole process out because they had already negotiated on other properties, so their finances were at risk too. So there was a lot of people involved in trying to fix something when something very bad happened because the intention was to do that.
You, in fact, as part of your response to request for production of documents on July 8th of 2011, provided a commercial lease agreement dated November 4th, 2010, which would be after that one I just pointed out to you. Correct?
Repeat that again, please.
You, as part of your response to plaintiff's request for production of documents, provided a copy as number 13 in your written responses. This is, by the way, in Exhibit M, page 2. You provided, actually number 12, you provided a commercial lease agreement dated November 4th, 2010, and then on number 13, you provided a lease agreement dated June 1, 2010.
And where is this?
I'm just looking at your written response, which, to our request for production of documents, which is Exhibit M, page 2, numbers 12 and 13. Let's just strike that question. Let's look at your exhibit book, exhibit number 9.
Which is this book, correct?
Yes, it is. And it has been stipulated. Admission has been stipulated. So, are you there at Exhibit 9?
Yes, I am.
Does this look familiar to you?
Yes.
And if you look at the bottom of what is marked as lease agreement, page 4, it says fixed rent. And then if you turn to the top of the next page, it says that the rent shall be due, it's $6,000 on or before the first day of July.
On what page?
The next page, it says lease agreement, page 5 at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the top of that, basically indicates you're going to be paying $6,000 a month, with $3,000 going to the sellers, $3,000 being applied to closing costs and fees.
That was the very initial purchase agreement.
And it also says in the next paragraph, property is leased for a fixed rental of $12,000 for the 2-month term hereof.
That was this was the very, and this is actually not, this is one of the very first pieces of paper that was part of the negotiation of the initial purchase of the property.
But it's after, well, hold on. Well, so it's before. So if we look at what's marked as page 14, it's before the one that we saw in my book, correct? I asked you a question.
Okay, repeat the question,
It was
please.
executed before the one that we saw in my book, so it's part of the negotiation process, right?
Actually, this was part of it in a sense, yes.
It was signed.
Well, only by one person.
I didn't finish my question. It was signed prior to the one in my exhibit book, correct?
Correct.
So, if you look at, are you still leasing this property?
Yes.
What is the monthly amount that Rivendell is leasing this property for?
$3,000.
And between when you finalized the lease purchase negotiations, which appears to have been somewhere in the second half of 2010, based on the documents that we've seen, from that point until what you've already testified, I believe, was mid to late 2011, there were no clients on the property, correct? So $3,000 a month of Rivendell's money, plus all the initial deposit money, which we have sort of, you initially said it was around 25,000, I said at least 14. All of that money, plus the deposit money, went toward a property that had no clients on it, but did have some friends and family members of yours living on it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, is it
Yes.
possible we could have a quick bathroom break? And then also, I'm wondering if, I only have, besides my client, I only have 2 other witnesses, and they are very short. And I asked them to come at 11. I'm wondering if I could have them, I think I could complete them by 12 and then carry on with Ms. McDowell after lunch.
Any objection to that order?
I have no objection to that, Your Honor.
All right. We'll be back at 5 after,
All rise.
and we'll take up with your other witnesses then, Ms. Mayhem. All right.